In an isolated country house, a therapy dog bit the floor and howled desperately. Ignoring the animal's instinct, an adult finally broke through the floor, revealing the hidden danger that silently threatened the life of an autistic child. The hammer fell with a dull thud, echoing in the silence that followed the final crack of the wood. Sarah, gasping, took a step back, adrenaline still pulsing through her veins. The floorboards, previously untouched, now displayed an irregular gash, a dark and menacing hole. Max, the golden-furred golden retriever, ceased his howling, but his body remained tense, his eyes fixed on the opening, a tremor running through his frame. "What is it, Max?" Sarah murmured, her voice hoarse. She knelt, curiosity mixed with an inexplicable dread. The darkness beneath the floor seemed deep, an abyss of secrets guarded by the old country house. She stretched out her hand, fumbling at the rough edge of the broken wood, and that's when she noticed it. A smell, subtle at first, almost imperceptible, mixed with the aroma of old wood and accumulated dust. But as she concentrated, the odor intensified. A chemical trail, sweet and suffocating, that scratched the back of her throat. It wasn't the smell of mold nor of rats. It was something more sinister, more artificial. Max let out a low whine, a sound Sarah had never heard before, a lament of pure anguish. He pushed his snout into the hole, sniffing desperately, and then looked at Sarah, his brown eyes full of an urgency that transcended any training. He wasn't just alerting, he was pleading. "Gas!" The word escaped Sarah's lips in an almost inaudible whisper. A chilling shiver ran down her spine. The house was old, yes, but the gas installations had been checked years ago. A leak, silent, invisible. The realization hit her with brutal force. The smell, Max's behavior, the heavy feeling in the air that she had ignored for hours, attributing it to tiredness. Panic began to set in. Gas was naturally odorless. The smell she felt was mercaptan, added to warn of leaks. But what if the leak was small, gradual, and the smell only became noticeable now, after hours, days perhaps? "Leo!" Sarah screamed, her voice choked with terror. Leo was in his room upstairs, absorbed in his world of blocks and colors. Leo, who wouldn't speak if he felt a headache, who wouldn't complain of dizziness, who wouldn't understand the invisible danger surrounding him. He was so vulnerable, so dependent. Max, as if understanding Sarah's thought, began to pull at her pant leg, barking now, a sharp, insistent bark, guiding her away from the hole, away from the smell that grew stronger with each breath. Sarah stumbled to her feet, her heart pounding wildly in her chest. The hammer lay forgotten on the floor. Her eyes swept the room, searching for a window, an exit, but the priority was Leo. "Max, let's go! Leo!" she ordered, already running towards the stairs. Max shot ahead, taking the steps two at a time, a tireless guardian. Leo's room was at the end of the hallway. The door was ajar. Sarah pushed it open with a jolt, the sound echoing in the silence of the house. Leo was sitting on the floor, his back to the door, completely immersed in building a tower of colorful blocks. The soft afternoon light streamed through the window, illuminating his blonde hair. He seemed perfectly fine, oblivious to the drama unfolding. "Leo!" Sarah called, her voice almost a hoarse whisper. The smell of gas was weaker here, but still present, an invisible and lethal mist. Leo didn't react immediately. He continued to stack a blue block on a red one, his concentration unwavering. "Leo, my love, we need to get out of here now." Sarah approached, reaching out to him. The urgency in her voice was palpable, but Leo was sensitive to sudden changes. He turned his head slowly, his large blue eyes meeting hers. There was a slight irritation in his gaze, the interruption of his routine. "Blocks," he murmured, pointing to his creation. "No, my love, not now. We need to go outside, Sarah tried to pick him up, but Leo recoiled, resisting the unexpected touch. He didn't like being caught off guard, having his activity interrupted. Max entered the room, sniffing the air, then nudged Leo's hand with his snout, a low whimper escaping his throat. It was a plea, an attempt at communication that Sarah knew Leo understood in a way she couldn't. Sarah's head spun. Time was crucial. The gas was silent, insidious. How many hours had Leo already breathed that air? Her son's life depended on her ability to act, to overcome Leo's resistance, to trust Max's instinct. "Please, Leo," she pleaded, tears beginning to blur her vision. "Please, my love, it's dangerous." She knew he wouldn't understand the word dangerous in the same way she did. But the urgency in her voice, Max's behavior, the tense atmosphere in the room, perhaps it was enough. She needed to get him out of there, no matter the cost. Leo's life was in her hands, and Max had been the guardian angel who alerted her. Sarah's head spun. Time was crucial. "Please, my love, it's dangerous." She knew he wouldn't understand the word dangerous in the same way she did. Sarah tried again, extending her hands gently but firmly. "Leo, we need to go. Now." Leo, sensing the drastic change in his mother's tone and Max's persistence, who was now nudging his leg with his snout, began to get agitated. His shoulders stiffened, and he shook his head, his eyes fixed on the blocks. "No! Blocks!" His voice was a protest, a barrier against the chaos Sarah was introducing into his ordered world. The smell of gas, though weaker, seemed to intensify for Sarah, mixing with her growing dizziness. A sharp headache pierced her temples. She felt the floor sway slightly beneath her feet. There was no time for negotiation. "I'm sorry, my love," Sarah whispered, her voice choked. She quickly bent down, wrapping Leo in her arms. He struggled, a sharp cry escaping his throat, a sound of pure discomfort and confusion. His small fists pounded on Sarah's shoulders, but she held him tight, pressing him against her. "It's okay, Mommy's here. We're going to get out of here." Max, seeing the struggle, let out a short, urgent bark, then ran to the bedroom door, looking back as if to say, "Hurry, this way." With Leo kicking and screaming in her arms, Sarah stumbled out of the room. Her son's weight, combined with dizziness and panic, made each step a trial. The hallway seemed longer, the walls spun. She could smell the gas stronger now, rising from downstairs, an invisible and suffocating cloud. "Max, the stairs!" she gasped, her lungs burning. The golden retriever was already descending the steps, looking back every few steps, his eyes fixed on Sarah and Leo. He was the compass, the guide. Going down the stairs with Leo struggling was a nightmare. Each step was a risk of falling. Sarah hugged Leo even tighter, protecting his head against her chest. "Almost there, my love, almost there," she murmured, more to herself than to him. Leo continued to cry, his routine broken, his space invaded. The pain in Sarah's heart was almost as intense as the fear of the gas. Upon reaching the ground floor, the smell was overwhelming. The air seemed dense, heavy. Sarah felt a sudden nausea. Her knees threatened to give way. She could see the hole in the floorboards, the darkness from which the danger emanated. Max gently tugged at her pant leg, guiding her away from the living room towards the front door. With a final effort, Sarah reached the doorknob. Her hands trembled so much she almost couldn't turn it. The fresh afternoon air rushed into the house as the door opened, a gust of life amidst the invisible threat. She pushed the door open with her shoulder, and with Leo still in her arms, stumbled outside onto the lawn. The afternoon sun hit her face, and the fresh air filled her lungs, bringing immediate relief, but also an even greater dizziness. Sarah fell to her knees on the soft grass. Leo still firmly held in her arms. He stopped crying, perhaps confused by the sudden change, perhaps feeling the relief in his mother's body. Max sat beside them, panting, but with a calm that contrasted with the chaos of moments before. He licked Leo's face, then Sarah's, a gesture of comfort and duty fulfilled. Sarah took a deep breath, the fresh air clearing her mind. But the image of the hole in the floor and the persistent smell still haunted her. She looked at Leo, who was now quiet, his blue eyes watching the tree leaves swaying in the wind. He was safe, thanks to Max. The panic, now that the immediate danger had passed, turned into an uncontrollable tremor. Her muscles ached, her head throbbed. She pulled her cell phone from her pocket, her hands still shaking. She needed to call emergency services, the gas company, someone. "Max," she whispered, hugging the dog with her free hand, tears streaming freely now. "You saved us. You saved Leo." The golden retriever simply rested his head on her shoulder, a silent and loyal guardian, whose instinct had been the only barrier between life and death on that isolated day in the country house, to the gas company, to someone. "You saved us." Sarah tried to take a deep breath again, but the air, though fresh, felt heavy, laden with the echo of the gas smell that still permeated her nostrils. Her throat was dry, scratchy. Her entire body trembled, a delayed reaction to the shock and exertion. Leo, still in her arms, had stopped crying. His blue eyes, previously fixed on the tree leaves, now turned to his mother's wet face, an expression of curiosity and perhaps a hint of confusion. He didn't understand the gravity of what had happened, but he felt Sarah's tension and relief. With immense effort, Sarah managed to unlock her phone. Her fingers, still trembling, could barely dial the numbers. 911, fire department. It was the most urgent. The voice on the other end of the line seemed distant, muffled by the ringing in her ears. "Emergency, what's your emergency?" the voice asked, calm and professional. "Gas leak. In my house, your country house. Isolated." Sarah stammered, words tumbling out. "My son, autistic. I think he inhaled for hours. My dog. He alerted us. The floor. I broke the floor." The operator's voice, now clearer, tried to calm her. "Mom, take a deep breath. What's your full address? Is there a fire? An explosion?" "No, not yet. But the smell, it's very strong. I feel dizzy. My son is okay, but he doesn't speak. He wouldn't complain." "Please, come quickly," Sarah pleaded, her voice rising. She gave the address, describing the house and its isolated location. The operator promised to send a team immediately and instructed her to move further away from the house, if possible, and not to return for any reason. Hanging up the phone, Sarah felt a new wave of nausea. Her head throbbed with a searing pain, and dizziness made her close her eyes for a moment. She hugged Leo even tighter, the warmth of his body a small comfort. Max, sensing Sarah's discomfort, licked her hand again, then lay down beside them, his snout resting on his paws, but his eyes still fixed on the house, as if on guard. Looking at the country house, now silent and seemingly harmless under the afternoon sun, Sarah felt a shiver. That home, which should have been a refuge, had become a death trap. The hole in the floor, the darkness from which the gas emanated, was an image that would be etched in her mind forever. And Leo, so close to danger, so oblivious to it. Her son's vulnerability, unable to communicate what he felt, was an overwhelming burden. "Oh my God, Leo," she whispered, kissing the top of her son's blonde head. "We almost lost you." Her gratitude for Max was immense, almost overwhelming. He wasn't just a therapy dog. He was a hero. His instinct, his persistence, his ability to perceive the invisible had been the only thing that saved them. How many times had she tried to calm him, scold him, without understanding the urgency behind his howls and bites? Guilt hit her, a cold and bitter wave. She should have listened sooner, she should have trusted him from the beginning, but there was no time for regrets now. The important thing was that they were alive, out of immediate danger. The distant sound of a siren, faint at first, began to be heard, gradually growing louder. Help was on the way. Sarah closed her eyes, allowing tears to stream freely now, a mixture of relief, fear, and exhaustion. Max, sensing her emotion, leaned closer, his body warm and solid, an anchor amidst the chaos. She opened her eyes and looked at the house again, then at Leo, who was now playing with a blade of grass, and finally at Max. That dog was not just a pet, he was family, a guardian with a gift that defied comprehension. And at that moment, under the afternoon sun, Sarah knew that their lives would never be the same. The distant sound of the siren, faint at first, began to be heard, gradually growing louder. Help was on the way. The ringing in her ears subsided a little, but the headache persisted, a rhythmic pounding in her temples. Sarah tried to stand, but her legs were weak, and she felt dizzy again. She decided to stay seated, protecting Leo, who seemed oblivious to the urgency of the situation, absorbed in his small discovery in the grass. Max, however, was on high alert. His ears were perked, and he stared intently at the dirt road leading to the house, anticipating the arrival. The siren grew louder, clearer, and soon a red fire truck and a white ambulance appeared around the bend in the road. The sight of the emergency vehicles brought a wave of relief so intense that Sarah felt a lump in her throat. They were really coming. It wasn't a nightmare. The vehicles stopped a safe distance from the house. 2 firefighters, in their heavy uniforms and gear, jumped from the truck, while 2 paramedics, with their first aid kits, exited the ambulance. All moved with calm, professional efficiency. One of the firefighters, a tall, robust man with a serious face, approached cautiously. "Ma'am, are you okay? And the child?" Sarah managed to nod, her voice still choked. "Yes. We're okay. My son, Leo, he's autistic. I think he inhaled gas for a while." The paramedics approached, assessing the situation with experienced eyes. "Let's take a look at him, ma'am, and at you, too." One of the paramedics, a dark-haired woman with kind eyes, knelt beside Sarah. "Hello, Leo. I'm Anna. Can we see how you're doing?" She spoke in a soft voice without getting too close, respecting Leo's space. Leo, who until then had been focused on the grass, raised his head and looked at the paramedic, then at the firefighter, his blue eyes registering the new figures in his environment. He showed no fear, just his usual distant curiosity. Sarah quickly explained, "He doesn't talk much, but he seems okay now. He was crying a lot before." As paramedic Anna began to check Leo's vital signs with a pulse oximeter, the firefighter turned to Sarah. "You said you broke the floor? Where exactly?" "In the living room," Sarah pointed to the house. "My dog. He was howling and biting the floor. He knew. He alerted me." The firefighter looked at Max, who was still sitting beside Sarah, vigilant. A slight smile of recognition crossed his serious face. A good dog. They have an incredible sense of smell. The other firefighter, who was already preparing with a portable gas detector, began to move towards the house. "We'll take a reading. You and the boy need to stay here, away from the house." Paramedic Anna finished checking Leo. "His vital signs seem stable for now, but we need to take him for a more complete evaluation at the hospital, just to be sure. And you too, ma'am. Gas inhalation can have delayed effects." Sarah felt a new tightness in her chest. The hospital. More changes for Leo, but she knew it was necessary. "All right, thank you." The firefighter who had entered the house returned quickly, his face now more grave. "We have a high reading. It's a significant leak. We've already notified the gas company to come and isolate the area and make repairs. No one should enter the house for now." He looked at Sarah with a serious expression. "You and your son were very lucky. That dog, he's a real hero." The firefighter's words confirmed what Sarah already knew, the gravity of the situation, the proximity of tragedy. Guilt hit her again, but this time mixed with an even deeper gratitude for Max. She leaned down and kissed the golden retriever's head. "You're the best, Max, the best." Max responded with a slight wag of his tail, as if to say, "Just doing my job." The paramedics helped Sarah to her feet. She picked up Leo, who, to her surprise, did not protest. He seemed to be processing everything at his own silent pace. Max followed them closely as they headed towards the ambulance. "Can the dog come with us?" Sarah asked, looking at paramedic Anna. "He's a therapy dog for Leo. He needs him." Anna smiled. "Under these circumstances, of course, he's part of the family and clearly a savior." As Sarah and Leo were settled in the ambulance, Max agilely jumped inside, sitting at Leo's feet, his gaze still fixed on the house that almost became their tomb. The fresh afternoon air, now filled with the smell of exhaust fumes and the metallic scent of the ambulance, felt like a new beginning. The house, with its deadly secret revealed, was left behind, under the watchful eye of the firefighters. The journey to the hospital was the next step, but Sarah knew that no matter what happened, they were together, and that was all that mattered. "Mom, are you okay? And the child?" Sarah managed to nod, her voice still choked with emotion and weakness. "Yes, we're okay. My son, Leo, he's autistic. And at you too." One of the paramedics, a dark-haired woman with kind eyes, knelt beside Sarah. "Hello, Leo. I'm Anna. He doesn't talk much, but he seems okay now. Where exactly?" "My dog. He knew. He alerted me. A good dog. We'll take a reading. And at you too, the hospital. More changes for Leo, more an unknown environment. All right, thank you. We have a high reading. That dog. You're the best, Max, the best." Max responded with a slight wag of his tail, as if to say, "Just doing my job." "He needs him." Anna smiled. The ambulance doors closed with a dull thud, isolating Sarah, Leo, and Max from the outside world and the chaos they had left behind. The sound of the siren, once a signal of hope, was now a distant, muffled melody, blending with the constant hum of medical equipment. Sarah sat on one of the side benches, with Leo nestled in her lap. He was quiet, his face pale, and his blue eyes fixed on some invisible point on the ambulance ceiling, as if cataloguing every detail of the new environment. Max, faithful as ever, lay at Leo's feet, his snout resting on the boy's legs, a golden anchor of calm amidst the uncertainty. Paramedic Anna, with her soft voice and careful gestures, was rechecking Leo's vital signs. The pulse oximeter glowed on the boy's pinky finger. "He's reacting well, Sarah. Oxygen levels are good, but it's good that we're going to the hospital. Carbon monoxide can be treacherous, and the effects might not be immediate." She paused, looking at the dog. "He's a real hero. You and Leo were incredibly lucky to have him." The praise for Max brought a small ray of light to Sarah. She stroked Leo's head, then reached out to touch Max's soft fur. "He's more than luck. He's our family. He's the reason we're here." Leo, as if sensing the tension in his mother's voice, moved slightly, nestling closer. Sarah hugged him tightly, feeling the warmth of his small body. With each bump of the ambulance, she wondered what awaited him at the hospital. How would he react to so many strangers, so many new stimuli? Leo's routine was sacred, and now it was completely broken. The uncertainty was a heavy burden. "At the hospital, they'll do some blood tests to check carbon monoxide levels in both of your blood," Anna explained, anticipating Sarah's questions. "They'll also want to observe you for a few hours to ensure there are no delayed effects. For Leo, we can try to find a quieter room, if possible, to minimize stress. I'll inform the emergency team about his needs." Sarah nodded, grateful for the consideration. "He's very sensitive to new environments. and loud noises. "I understand," Anna said. "We'll do our best to make this as easy as possible for him." Max, sensing Sarah's anxiety, lifted his head and licked her hand, then Leo's face. Leo, in turn, raised one small hand and touched Max's snout, a rare gesture of spontaneous affection that made Sarah's heart ache. It was a silent reminder of the unbreakable connection between them and the vital role Max played in Leo's life. The landscape rushed by the ambulance windows, blurred trees, flickering streetlights. The country house, with its hidden danger and deceptive beauty, was now miles away. Sarah tried to push away the image of the hole in the floor, of the faint smell she hadn't noticed. Guilt still gnawed at her, but gratitude for Max was a balm that began to heal the invisible wounds. "He'll be okay, Mommy?" Leo suddenly asked, his voice small and drawn out, breaking the silence. It was a rare question for him, and Sarah felt a shiver. He was more aware than she imagined, absorbing the gravity of the situation in his own way. Sarah hugged him again. "Yes, my love, we'll both be okay, and Max too. We're going to a place where doctors will help us make sure we're strong and healthy." She looked at Max, who seemed to understand every word, his brown eyes fixed on her, offering silent support. The ambulance began to slow down, and the city lights started to appear on the horizon, growing in intensity. The hospital, the next chapter of their ordeal. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to gather all her strength. She had to be strong for Leo. And for Max. They had survived something terrible, and now it was time to heal. The road would be long, but they were not alone. The ambulance slowed to a gentle jolt, and the siren's wail, once an urgent lament, finally fell silent. Sarah clutched Leo in her arms, feeling his small body tremble slightly. The back doors swung open, and the relative quiet of the ambulance was shattered by a cacophony of new sounds. The murmur of voices, the rattle of gurneys, the constant beeping of machines, and the pungent smell of disinfectant and medicines. It was the emergency room, a whirlwind of activity that made Sarah's heart race with apprehension. A team of nurses and doctors approached the ambulance, their faces serious and efficient. Anna, the paramedic, began to relay information quickly, emphasizing the gas inhalation and Leo's condition. "Autistic child, very sensitive to stimuli. The dog is a therapy dog, essential for him," she explained, pointing to Max, who had already jumped to the ground and was nestled near Leo's legs, a golden point of calm amidst the chaos. Leo, who until then had been in an almost catatonic state of stillness, began to show signs of discomfort. He squeezed his eyes shut, his small hands clenching into fists, and a low moan escaped his lips. The noise, the bright fluorescent lights, and the number of people were too much for him. Sarah felt a pang of despair. "Please, he's not used to this," she whispered to a nurse approaching with a gurney. "Understood, ma'am," the nurse replied, her voice professional, but with a touch of kindness. "We'll try to be as quick and calm as possible." With Anna's help, Sarah carefully transferred Leo to the gurney. Max jumped to the side of the gurney, staying as close as possible to Leo, his body serving as a protective barrier against the overwhelming world around them. The medical team, seeing the interaction and the dog's importance, made a visible effort to respect Max's space. They were taken to a triage room, where a young doctor with glasses perched on his nose began to ask questions. Full name, age, medical history. Sarah tried to answer clearly, but her mind was blurry with exhaustion, and adrenaline still pulsed through her veins. Meanwhile, a nurse took blood samples from Leo, who whimpered but didn't fight, Max's paw resting gently on his leg, a silent and constant comfort. "We need a sample from you too, ma'am, to check carbon monoxide levels," the nurse said, extending a tourniquet. Sarah nodded, watching the needle pierce her skin. The physical pain was minimal compared to the emotional pain gnawing at her. "He'll be okay, won't he?" Sarah asked the doctor, her voice choked. "He's so small." The doctor, Dr. Almeida, looked at her seriously. "We're doing everything we can, ma'am. His vital signs are stable, which is a good sign. But carbon monoxide is insidious. We need the blood test results to be sure." He paused. "You and your dog, you acted with impressive speed. It could have been much worse." The doctor's words, though meant to reassure her, only intensified Sarah's guilt. "I should have noticed sooner," she murmured, looking away. "Max tried to warn me for days." Anna, who had remained by Sarah's side, touched her shoulder. "Sarah, you did what you could. Gas leaks are treacherous. No one could have predicted this. The important thing is that you're here, safe." After a series of quick tests and a brief observation, a nurse returned with news that brought a small relief. "Leo's carbon monoxide levels are elevated, but not at a critical level. The same for you, ma'am. We'll keep you both under observation for a few hours and perhaps give Leo some supplemental oxygen, just as a precaution." "And the room?" Sarah asked, thinking of Anna's promise. "We managed to get a quieter room in the pediatric ward," the nurse replied. "It's more isolated with less movement, and Max can come, of course." Relief flooded Sarah. A quiet room. That was all she could ask for at that moment. As they pushed Leo's gurney down the hallway, Max followed closely, his gaze fixed on the boy. Sarah walked alongside, holding Leo's hand, who now seemed a little more relaxed, perhaps by the end of triage and the promise of a calmer environment. The room was small but clean and indeed quieter. There was a bed for Leo and a reclining armchair for Sarah. Max settled on the floor beside Leo's bed, his body forming a protective barrier. Sarah sat in the armchair, watching her son, who was now lying in bed, looking at the ceiling, a little oxygen flowing gently through a small nasal cannula. Exhaustion hit her with full force. She closed her eyes for a moment. The images of the broken floor and the smell of gas still fresh in her mind. But then she opened her eyes and looked at Max, who was watching Leo with unwavering devotion. The silent hero, her son's guardian angel. Sarah knew that the recovery journey would be long, both physically and emotionally. But looking at Leo, who now seemed to be falling asleep peacefully, and at Max, who was the embodiment of loyalty, she felt a new wave of strength. They had faced danger and survived, and they would do it together, one step at a time. The night at the hospital would be just the beginning. The small room in the pediatric ward was a sanctuary of silence compared to the whirlwind of the emergency room. The walls were a soft pastel shade, and the indirect light from the hallway barely penetrated, creating an atmosphere of calm. Sarah watched Leo, who was now sleeping deeply, the small nasal cannula almost imperceptible on his face. The supplemental oxygen seemed to be doing its job, and Leo's breathing was regular and soft. Max, faithful as ever, lay beside the bed, his head resting on his paws, his eyes half closed, but always vigilant. Sarah sat in the reclining armchair, feeling the weight of every muscle in her body. The adrenaline that had propelled her for hours began to dissipate, leaving her exhausted and vulnerable. The silence of the room, though welcome, also allowed her mind to wander freely, revisiting the terrifying moments. She closed her eyes, and the image of the broken floor, of the faint smell of gas she hadn't noticed, and of Max's desperate howls replayed in her mind. Guilt was a tight knot in her stomach. How could she have been so blind, so oblivious to the danger lurking beneath her feet, threatening her son's life? A nurse, a middle-aged woman with a gentle smile, entered the room, moving with a discretion that Sarah appreciated. "How are our patients?" Adushi whispered, checking the monitors beside Leo's bed. "He's sleeping," Sarah replied, her voice hoarse. "He seems calmer." "That's great," the nurse said, adjusting the oxygen flow. "Both of your blood test results are encouraging. carbon monoxide levels are decreasing. We'll keep him on oxygen for a few more hours, and if everything continues well, you'll probably be able to go home in the morning." The word home brought a mix of relief and apprehension. The country house, the hole in the floor, the gas, the house. Sarah began, her voice faltering. "We can't go back there until it's safe." The nurse nodded, understanding. "Of course, Dr. Almeida has already contacted the fire department and the gas company. They'll do a thorough inspection and ensure everything is repaired before you return. For now, you're safe here." Sarah nodded, grateful for the information. At least, someone was taking care of the practical details while she tried to process the trauma. She looked at Max, who had lifted his head at the sound of the nurse's voice, but now lowered it again, his brown eyes fixed on Leo. He saved Leo's life," Sarah told the nurse, a lump in her throat. The nurse smiled warmly. "He's a wonderful dog. We've had some therapy dogs here before, but the connection between him and your son is really special. He's a true hero." After the nurse left, the silence returned, broken only by the soft beep of Leo's monitor and Max's heavy breathing. Sarah watched her son, his face serene in sleep. She got up from the armchair and knelt beside Max, stroking his soft fur. "Thank you, Max," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Thank you for not giving up on us." Max responded with a slight wag of his tail, his eyes meeting hers in a moment of silent understanding. The night dragged on. Sarah tried to sleep, but her mind refused to shut down. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the floorboards, felt the panic. She got up to check on Leo to make sure he was still breathing, that he was safe. Max, sensing her restlessness, lifted his head and watched her with infinite patience. Near dawn, a faint light began to seep through the curtain gaps. The world outside was waking up, and with it, the promise of a new day. Leo stirred in bed, a small moan escaping his lips. His eyes opened slowly, blinking against the dim light. He looked at Sarah, then at Max, and a small, almost imperceptible smile appeared on his face. "Good morning, my love," Sarah whispered, feeling a wave of love and relief. She took Leo's small hand, which squeezed her fingers with surprising strength. Max, sensing that Leo was awake, got up and licked the boy's face, who giggled softly. It was a sound Sarah didn't know how much she needed to hear. That laugh, so pure and innocent, was proof that they had won. The recovery journey would be long, Sarah knew. There would be the trauma, the logistics of fixing the house, the need to rebuild Leo's routine. But at that moment, seeing her son laugh and Max by her side, she felt renewed strength. The night at the hospital was over. The next chapter of their lives was just beginning. The faint light of dawn began to peek through the gaps in the hospital room curtains, painting the room with soft shades of grey and pale pink. The air, once heavy with the night's tension, now felt lighter, laden with the promise of a new day. Sarah sat in the armchair, her eyes swollen with fatigue, but open, fixed on Leo. He still slept, his breathing regular and soft, the small nasal cannula almost imperceptible. Max, beside the bed, also seemed to have succumbed to sleep for a few moments, his head heavy on his paws, but one eye occasionally open to check on the boy. Sarah had spent most of the night in a state of anxious vigil. Every beep of the monitor, every deeper sigh from Leo made her jump. Guilt was a relentless companion, whispering in her ears about what she hadn't noticed, about Max's warnings she had ignored. She got up every hour, checking Leo's pulse, touching his forehead, just to make sure he was there, real and safe. Max, sensing her anguish, lifted his head and watched her with infinite patience, a silent reminder of his constant presence. Around 6 in the morning, the silence of the room was broken by a small moan. Leo stirred in bed, a slow and deliberate movement. His eyes opened slowly, blinking against the dim light that now filtered in more clearly. He looked at Sarah, then at Max, and a small smile, almost imperceptible, appeared on his face. It wasn't the vibrant, life-filled smile she loved so much, but it was a start. "Good morning, my love," Sarah whispered, feeling a wave of love and relief so intense it almost made her cry. She leaned in, taking Leo's small hand, which squeezed her fingers with surprising strength for such a small, newly recovered boy. Max, sensing that Leo was awake, got up with a fluid movement. He licked the boy's face, who giggled softly. It was the melody of life, resonating after the menacing silence of death. A nurse entered the room, a different woman from the night before with an equally gentle demeanor. "Good morning, family," she said in a soft tone. "Looks like we have a patient awake and smiling." She checked Leo's monitors and the oxygen catheter. "His carbon monoxide levels are almost back to normal. We can remove the oxygen soon. And how are you feeling, Mom?" "Better now," Sarah replied, her gaze fixed on Leo, who was stroking Max's head. "He'll be okay, won't he?" "He's recovering very well," the nurse assured. "Dr. Almeida will be here soon to discharge you. He said the gas company personnel are already at your house, and the firefighters confirmed the leak has been isolated. They'll make the necessary repairs." The word home still brought a pang of apprehension, but the news of the repairs was a relief. "Thank you," Sarah said, feeling a little more steady. "And Max, can he come with us?" The nurse smiled. "Of course. He's part of the family and, frankly, a hero. We're sure he'll continue to be a vital part of Leo's recovery." Minutes later, Dr. Almeida entered, his face serious, but with a gleam of satisfaction in his eyes. He examined Leo, asked Sarah a few questions, and finally delivered the news she had been waiting for. "Leo is ready to go home. His CO levels are normal, and he seems to be recovering well. However, it's crucial that you don't return to the country house until the gas company and fire department give the safety clearance. We've already arranged for you to have a place to stay, if you need it." Sarah nodded, grateful. The logistics would be a challenge, but at that moment, the only thing that mattered was her son's safety. "Thank you, Doctor, for everything." As the nurse helped Sarah dress Leo and prepare the few things they had, Max remained glued to the boy's side. Leo, though still a little pale, seemed more alert, his curious eyes observing the movement around. He didn't whimper when the nasal cannula was removed, just nestled closer to Max. Leaving the hospital, even if for an uncertain future, felt like a gigantic step. There would be the trauma, the logistics of fixing the house, the need to rebuild Leo's routine, to deal with the terrifying memories. But at that moment, seeing her son giggle softly as Max licked his face and feeling the dog's silent strength by her side, she felt a renewed strength. The hospital corridor, once a labyrinth of worries and hopes, now seemed like a tunnel to freedom. Sarah pushed Leo's wheelchair, who, though pale, seemed fascinated by the passing faces and fluorescent lights. Max, with his leash loose, walked with silent dignity beside the chair, his body a protective shield for the boy. The nurse, with a warm smile, accompanied them to the exit, handing over a folder with instructions and a card with the address of the temporary apartment the hospital had provided. "Take care, family," she said, her eyes resting on Max with evident admiration. "And you, Max, keep being the best friend Leo could have." The fresh morning air hit Sarah like a soft shock as they exited the building. It was a stark contrast to the antiseptic smell and air conditioning of the hospital. She took a deep breath, feeling the weak sun on her face. The city, with its hum of cars and people, seemed a world away from the threatening quiet of the country house. A taxi was already waiting for them. The driver, a middle-aged man with a gentle smile, helped Sarah put the wheelchair in the trunk and settle Leo in the back seat, with Max nestled at his feet. During the ride, Leo kept his head against the window, watching the world go by. Max, as always, was alert, his brown eyes fixed on the boy, as if to ensure that nothing else could disturb him. The temporary apartment was modest, but clean and cozy. There was a small living room, a compact kitchen and 2 bedrooms. The smell of cleanliness was comforting, but the absence of their own things, of their own smells, was palpable. For Leo, the change was a disruption to his carefully constructed routine. Sarah expected a meltdown, crying, but to her surprise, Leo remained calm. He explored the new environment with Max by his side, touching the walls, the furniture, as if mapping the new territory. Max, in turn, sniffed every corner, like a guardian inspecting the safety of the new home. "It's different, my love," Sarah whispered, hugging Leo as he snuggled into her lap on the sofa. "But it's safe, and we're together." Leo didn't respond with words, but his small squeeze of Sarah's hand and the way he leaned into her shoulder were a sufficient answer. Max lay at their feet, his body warm and heavy, an anchor of normalcy amidst the storm. Sarah spent the rest of the day trying to create some familiarity. She unpacked the few clothes the hospital had provided, organized Leo's toys that had been brought by the firefighters from the country house, a small teddy bear and a picture book. She prepared a simple dinner, watching Leo eat with an appetite she hadn't seen in days. Each bite, each discreet smile, was a victory. At night, after putting Leo to sleep in his new room, with Max lying on the floor beside the bed, Sarah sat in the living room, the darkness outside the window reflecting the quietness in her heart. Physical and emotional exhaustion hit her hard. The images of the past few days replayed in her mind. Max's desperate howl, the sweet and deceptive smell, Leo's pale face, the rush to the hospital. A solitary tear rolled down her face. She had failed to perceive the danger, but Max hadn't. He had been her eyes, her ears, her purest instinct. The gratitude she felt for the dog was immeasurable, a love that transcended words. The recovery journey would be long, not just for Leo, who would need time to fully recover and readjust to his routine, but also for Sarah. She would need to heal the invisible wounds of trauma, the guilt that still haunted her, and the house. The country house, which was once her refuge, now carried the shadow of a hidden danger. But looking at the door of Leo's room, where Max's silhouette could be seen, Sarah felt a renewed strength. They had survived the unthinkable, and with Max by her side, they would build a new beginning, one step at a time. The temporary apartment was not the home they knew, but it was a safe harbor, the first step towards a future that, though uncertain, would be lived together. The temporary apartment, though clean and functional, was not the home Sarah and Leo knew. Every corner, every piece of furniture was strange. For Leo, who thrived on familiarity, the change was a challenge. Sarah spent the morning trying to establish a routine, a semblance of normalcy. She prepared breakfast in the small kitchen, watching Leo as he explored the environment with Max, always by his side. The dog sniffed the baseboards, the corners of the furniture, as if mapping the new territory to ensure it was safe for his boy. Leo, to Sarah's surprise, did not have a meltdown. He seemed more subdued, more introspective. His eyes, once full of vibrant curiosity, now carried a shadow of weariness. He sat on the floor, playing with the teddy bear the firefighters had recovered from the country house, while Max rested his head on his lap, offering silent comfort. Sarah watched the scene, a lump in her throat. That teddy bear, one of the few familiar objects, was a link to the recent past, a reminder of the danger they had narrowly escaped. "Are you hungry, my love?" Sarah asked, kneeling beside Leo. He just shook his head without taking his eyes off the teddy bear. Max, sensing Sarah's concern, lifted his head and gently nudged her with his snout. She stroked the dog's head, feeling the soft texture of his fur, the strength of his body. He was her anchor, her beacon. The following days unfolded at a slow, deliberate pace. Sarah strived to fill the void of the country house with simple, comforting activities. They visited a small nearby park where Leo, with Max running by his side, seemed to find some of his former joy. He laughed when Max gently knocked him over in the grass, and Sarah felt her heart warm with each laugh. At night, after Leo had fallen asleep, Sarah sat in the living room, the darkness outside the window reflecting the quietness in her heart. Guilt was still a persistent shadow. She remembered Max's howls, the scratches on the floor, her own frustration and blindness. How could she have been so oblivious? How could she have ignored the instincts of her dog, which were so clear, so desperate? Max, as if sensing Sarah's anguish, came and rested his head on her lap. She stroked him, feeling the steady beat of his heart, the warmth of his body. "You saved me, Max," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You saved us. I'm so sorry I didn't listen to you sooner." Max just licked her hand, a gesture of forgiveness and understanding that Sarah didn't know she needed. Each day, Leo seemed to regain a little more of his energy. He began to interact more, to point to things he wanted, to smile more frequently. Max's presence was a constant balm. The dog slept beside his bed, followed him around the house, and was always ready for a game or a hug. Sarah, in turn, began to feel a renewed strength. Her gratitude for Max, the joy of seeing Leo recover, and the resilience she discovered in herself propelled her forward. She knew that the recovery journey would be long, that there would be challenges ahead. The country house was still there, a reminder of the danger, but also of the miracle. One afternoon, as Leo drew on the living room floor, with Max lying at his feet, Sarah's phone rang. It was Dr. Almeida. "Sarah, I have good news," he said. "The gas company has finished the repairs at your house. The firefighters did a thorough inspection and gave the safety clearance. The house is safe for you to return." Sarah felt a mix of relief and apprehension, returning to the country house, the place where everything almost ended and where everything began anew. She looked at Leo, who was giggling softly as Max licked the tip of his nose. They had survived, and now it was time to go home, to rebuild, to heal the wounds and start a new chapter. But this time Sarah knew she would never again ignore the silent warnings of her four-legged hero, the call from doctor to return, and Sarah. The car stopped. "It's safe." To her surprise, Leo showed no fear. They were home. The call from Dr. Almeida lingered in the air, a delicate balance between hope and apprehension. Sarah's hand trembled slightly as she lowered the phone. The sound of the doctor's voice, announcing that the house was safe, should have been pure relief, but a wave of anxiety coursed through her body. To return to the place where their lives had almost fallen apart. She looked at Leo, who was now focused on stacking colorful blocks, Max patiently observing every movement, the tip of his tail wagging softly. The image was one of peace, a peace she feared disturbing. "Back home, Max," she whispered, more to herself than to the dog. Max lifted his head, his brown eyes fixed on her, as if understanding the complexity of her emotions. He stood up, walked to her, and nudged her hand with his snout, a silent gesture of support. The decision deep down was already made. The temporary apartment was a safe harbor, but it wasn't home. Leo needed the familiarity of his own space, his own smells, his own routine. And Sarah needed to confront the past to be able to move forward. The next morning, with the help of a hospital social worker, they arranged transportation. The few bags they had were placed in the car, along with Leo's teddy bear and picture book. Max, as always, was alert, sensing the change in the air. The drive back to the country house was silent. Leo, in the back seat, watched the familiar landscape with contained curiosity. Sarah felt her heart beat faster with each mile that brought them closer. The dirt road, once an invitation to tranquility, now seemed like a path to an inevitable confrontation. When the house finally came into view, nestled among the trees, Sarah felt a tightness in her chest. The wooden facade, the windows reflecting the afternoon sun. Everything looked the same, but nothing was the same. The house carried the scars of an invisible danger. The car stopped. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to calm the tremor in her hands. She opened the door for Leo, who got out of the car with Max by his side. The dog sniffed the air, his ears perked, his eyes examining the surroundings with an intensity Sarah recognized. It was the same alert look he had before, but now it was a look of inspection, not despair. They approached the front door. Sarah hesitated for a moment, the key in her hand feeling heavy. "Ready, my love?" she asked Leo, who just nodded, his eyes fixed on the door. Max, with a gentle nudge of his snout, encouraged her to go forward. The door opened with a familiar creak. The smell of wood and earth, once so comforting, now brought a bitter memory. The air was clean, fresh, without the sweet, deceptive smell that had almost taken them. The firefighters had ventilated the place thoroughly. Sarah led Leo by the hand, Max walking ahead, sniffing every corner of the living room. Her eyes fixed on the spot where the floorboards had been broken, now repaired with new planks, slightly lighter than the old ones. It was a visible scar, a permanent reminder of what had happened. Leo stopped, his eyes fixed on the patch on the floor. He extended his small hand, touching the new wood with his fingertips. Max lay down beside him, his head resting on his paws, watching the boy with a protective calm. "It's all right now, my love," Sarah whispered, kneeling beside Leo, hugging him. "It's safe." To her surprise, Leo showed no fear. He turned to her, a small smile appearing on his lips. He pointed to Max and then to the floor, as if connecting the dots, understanding his friend's heroic action. Sarah felt a wave of emotion. That small gesture from Leo, that silent understanding, was a sign of healing. The house was no longer a place of danger, but a testament to resilience, love, and unwavering instinct. The following days were dedicated to rebuilding the routine, to filling the house with the sounds and smells of their lives. Sarah found herself looking at Max with a new depth of gratitude and respect. He wasn't just a therapy dog. He was a guardian, an essential member of her family, a silent hero. The country house, once a refuge, was now a sanctuary, a place where life had been tested and, against all odds, had prevailed. Sarah knew that the memories of the danger would never completely disappear, but they would be overshadowed by the memory of the love, loyalty, and courage that had saved them. They were home. And this time, Sarah promised herself she would listen. She would listen to the howls, the scratches, the silent warnings, because their lives depended on it, and they would do it together, always.